Overhyped wonder weapons. The truth behind Germany's tank dreams of 1946. Hey there, history buffs. If you're into diving deep into the what-ifs of World War II, this one's for you. We're about to unpack the legend of Germany's so-called wonder weapons, specifically their tank projects that never made it to the battlefield. Buckle up for a wild ride through history, myths, and some serious reality checks. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think about these crazy tank ideas and alternate history. World War II doesn't wrap up on May 8th, 1945. Instead, Nazi Germany somehow keeps fighting, rolling out futuristic tanks that could have changed everything. Sounds like something straight out of a Hollywood blockbuster, right? That's the allure of alternate history. It's like rewriting the script of the past. People love imagining what could have happened if things went just a little differently. And one of the hottest topics in this genre, what if Germany had more time to unleash its secret weapons, especially its tanks, in 1946? This obsession has a name, Panzerwaffe 46, or Armor of 46. It's all about the tanks and self-propelled guns Germany supposedly had in the works, but never got to build. These projects have become legendary, wrapped in myths about how they could have turned the tide of the war. But here's the big question. Were these wonder weapons really that amazing, or are we just caught up in the hype? In this deep dive, we'll peel back the layers of Panzerwaffe 46, explore why it's such a big deal, and look at the economic and historical realities behind it. Spoiler alert, the truth is way less glamorous than the legend. Where did the wonder weapon hype come from? To get why these German tank projects are so famous, we need to rewind to the post-war years. In the 1960s, historians started digging into captured German archives. The Allies, especially the US and Britain, had grabbed piles of documents from Nazi Germany, and these papers became a gold mine for researchers. The first to hit the spotlight? German aviation projects. By the 60s, planes had come a long way since the war, so those old designs didn't seem like a big secret anymore. Tanks, though, took a bit longer to get attention. It wasn't until the 1970s that the real juicy details started coming out. One guy who kicked this whole thing off was Walter Spielberger. He wasn't just a historian. He was a tank crewman who served on a Jag Panther in the final days of the war. His books were a game changer, shining a light on Germany's paper tanks, designs that never made it past blueprints. But here's the catch. A lot of what we know came from US and British intelligence reports from 1945 and 46. And those reports? Let's just say they were like a bad movie dub, full of mistakes and exaggerations. Those early errors planted the seeds for myths that are still floating around today. For example, many folks believed Germany was inches away from building game-changing superweapons. But when you dig into the real documents, you see a different story. These projects were often half-baked or outright impossible. So why did they get so much attention? Simple. Germany's archives are the first to open up. Meanwhile, American and Soviet projects stayed under wraps for decades. When the Soviets finally showed off their IS-7 tank in Kubinka in the 1980s, Western historians were floored. They thought the IS-3 was the best the Soviets had, but that tank was already considered outdated by 1946. Imagine if the Soviets had paraded the IS-7 back in the day. It would have blown minds. The economic reality. Could Germany afford these tanks? To figure out if Germany's wonder weapons were even possible, let's talk about the state of their economy by 1945. By the end of the war, Germany was a mess. The Nazi economy relied on plundered resources from occupied territories, forced labor, and a war machine that was running on fumes. Historical records show that by spring 1945, Germany was critically short on steel, aluminum, and fuel. Building tanks like the Panther or Tiger was already a struggle. They couldn't get enough high-quality armor. Engines kept breaking down, and spare parts were a nightmare to find. Now, imagine Germany trying to roll out brand new, high-tech tanks in this chaos. It's like trying to build a spaceship in your garage during a power outage. Projects like the E50 or E75 would have needed massive amounts of resources, not to mention time for design, testing, and production. Time was something Germany didn't have. Allied bombing raids were flattening factories, railroads were in ruins, and the Soviet and American armies were closing in fast. Let's compare that to the Allies. The Soviet Union was churning out T-34 and IS-2 tanks by the thousands. According to historical data, in 1944 alone, the Soviets produced around 18,000 tanks and self-propelled guns, while Germany managed less than 10,000. The U.S. was even more impressive, pumping out tens of thousands of Sherman tanks with a production line so efficient they could afford to experiment with new designs like the M26 Pershing. Germany, on the other hand, was stuck building complex, expensive tanks that broke down constantly and were a pain to fix. The Tiger and Panther were beasts on the battlefield, but they cost a fortune to make and maintain. Trying to build something even more advanced, like the E-Series, would have been like a broke guy buying a yacht. Possible? Sure, in a fantasy world. In reality? No way. What was Panzerwaffe 46 really about? So, what exactly is Panzerwaffe 46? It's a catch-all term for German tank and self-propelled gun projects that never got off the drawing board. Unlike Luftwaffe 46, which covered wild airplane designs, the tank projects were less varied but still sparked plenty of imagination. The most famous ones belong to the E-Series, a lineup that included everything from the light E-10 tank destroyer to the heavy E-50 and E-75. On paper, these tanks looked awesome. The E-50 was supposed to be an upgraded Panther, while the E-75 was meant to replace the Tiger. The goal was to standardize parts, simplify production, and build tanks that could stand up to the Allies' best. But here's the problem. These were more like desperate fixes than revolutionary breakthroughs. Take the E-50. It was designed as a medium tank weighing about 50 tons. But as the plans developed, engineers realized it would creep up to 57 or even 60 tons. Why? Because they wanted to slap an 88mm gun, the same one used on the Tiger, into a smaller turret. That made the tank heavier, cramped inside, and harder to build. For comparison, France's AMX-50, also a medium tank, ended up weighing around 60 tons, and they weren't even at war when they designed it. The E-75 was even wilder. It was a beefed-up Tiger, but its weight was spread across 16 road wheels, putting insane pressure on the suspension. Other German designs, like those from Alkit, used double road wheels to handle the load better, but even then, reliability was a big question mark. Imagine a 70-ton tank trying to roll through mud or snow. It'd probably get stuck faster than you could say blitzkrieg. Why Germany's tank dreams were doomed. Let's get real. Could these tanks have changed the war? Nope. It's not just about the economy or lack of time. The bigger issue was Germany's whole approach to tank design. By 1945, their Panther and Tiger tanks were some of the best in the world, but they were aging fast. The Allies, especially the Soviets and Americans, weren't just catching up, they were zooming past. Look at the Soviets. By spring 1945, they had the Object 257, a heavy tank that could shrug off hits from Germany's 88mm gun. And by late 45 into 46, they were working on even crazier designs. The IS-7, which stunned Western experts when it was revealed, weighed 68 tons, but had better armor and firepower than anything Germany had. The Americans weren't slacking either. Their M26 Pershing hit the battlefield in 45 and could go toe-to-toe with Panthers and Tigers. And if you peek at their paper projects, like the T-29 or T-30, you'll see tanks with heavy guns and armor that could take a beating. Germany, meanwhile, was stuck trying to squeeze more life out of old designs. Instead of building something totally new, they kept tinkering with Panthers and Tigers, which were already pushed to their limits. Suspensions couldn't handle extra weight, engines were unreliable, and production was a mess. Worst of all, they ran out of time to start from scratch. Self-propelled guns. a glimmer of hope? The one area where Germany still had some promise was self-propelled artillery. They had tons of designs for these, and some like light self-propelled guns based on the Jagdpanzer 38 actually had shot at being built. But here's the catch. By 45, Germany was down to just 3 chassis: the Jagdpanzer 38, Panther, and Tiger. Everything else was low priority. Medium and heavy self-propelled guns like the Jagdpanther were solid, but production was limited. New designs stayed on paper because Germany couldn't afford to experiment. Meanwhile, the Allies were cranking out self-propelled guns like the Soviet Su-100 or the American M10, simpler, cheaper, and just as effective. Myths versus reality, what we've learned. So what's the bottom line? Panzerwaffe 46 is more fantasy than fact. Germany's tank projects looked cool on paper, but they had zero chance in the real world. The economy was collapsing, resources were gone, and the Allies were way ahead. Sure, the Panther and Tiger were fearsome, but they were outdated and no replacement was coming. Why do these projects still capture our imagination? It's all about pop culture. Plastic model kits, video games like World of Tanks, and movies keep the myth alive. But let's be honest, even if Germany somehow built an E-50 or E-75, it wouldn't have mattered. The Allies were too strong, and Germany's industry was too weak. The story of Germany's wonder weapons isn't just about tanks. It's about how we love to dream about what could have been. These projects show us that even the wildest ideas can crash into reality. Germany in 45 was on its last legs, and no super tank could have saved it. But that doesn't make the story any less fascinating. It's a reminder that ambition is great, but execution is everything. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that subscribe button. We'll keep exploring history, busting myths, and uncovering cool facts. Drop a comment below. What do you think about Germany's tank dreams? Want more on World War II tech, or maybe a look at American or Soviet designs? Let me know, and I'll make it happen in the next video. Thanks for joining me on this journey through history. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. What's your take on these wonder weapons? Let's keep the conversation going.